There's a strange kind of exhaustion that's become so familiar, most of us have stopped noticing it. It isn't the exhaustion of working too late or sleeping too little. It begins the moment you step outside. The modern metropolis doesn't just move quickly, it demands. Engines accelerating, delivery trucks reversing, screens competing for your eyes before the day has properly started. 1,000 small decisions stacked one on top of another before you've had a second cup of coffee. In environmental psychology, this is known as sensory overload. It's a form of invisible visual noise that keeps our bodies in a state of low-grade perpetual alert. This constant friction contributes heavily to our chronic stress and social fatigue, leaving us longing for a space where our minds can simply rest. But if you wander just one block off the neon-lit main streets of Tokyo, the largest modern metropolis on Earth, something extraordinary happens. The noise vanishes. You're surrounded by a profound, structural quietness known in Japanese as Shizuka. Here, the streets don't feel like hostile thoroughfares designed to move vehicles at high speeds. Instead, they feel like open-air sanctuaries. How did this happen? This feeling has been studied for decades. It even has a name. Back in the 1970s, a Canadian composer named R. Murray Schafer argued that every environment has its own soundscape, its own invisible conversation with the nervous system. Schafer believed that modern cities were losing the ability to have that conversation without shouting. He wasn't wrong. What we now know from decades of research is that frequent exposure to this kind of noise doesn't just feel unpleasant. It triggers the body's core stress pathway, flooding the bloodstream with cortisol levels that, over time, never fully come back down. Most of us have been living in this state for so long, we've mistaken it for ordinary. The background tension, the low-level vigilance, the sense that something is always mildly wrong, even when nothing specifically is. That is not personality. That is physiology. And then something unexpected happens. Let's step off the beaten path in Tokyo again, to those tiny streets where the atmosphere changes almost instantly. The noise doesn't disappear. It simply stops demanding your attention. Footsteps become audible. Leaves brushing together suddenly sound louder than traffic. A bird several houses away becomes part of the background. What you are stepping into has a name. The Japanese call it Shizuka. Not silence exactly. Something more considered than that. Shizuka describes a structural, intentional quietness, a calm that has been designed into the fabric of daily life. And once you understand how it was built, you start to see your own environment with completely different eyes. The quiet of a Japanese residential street doesn't begin with good manners or a particularly considerate population. Surprisingly, this story doesn't begin with culture. It begins with a law. In 1968, Japan passed its first comprehensive city planning act, establishing a national zoning framework called Senshu, a system of exclusively residential zones designed to protect neighborhoods from the encroachment of commercial and industrial noise. In a Senshu zone, large-scale retail, entertainment venues, and heavy commercial operations are prohibited. But here is where Japan's approach diverges sharply from Western zoning traditions. Senshu isn't purely exclusionary. A small restaurant of under 150 square meters can operate on the ground floor of someone's home. A hair salon, a doctor's clinic, a tiny coffee shop. These are what urban planners call micro-commercial spaces. And they do something specific to a neighborhood. They provide the daily functions of community life. the grocer, the pharmacist, the familiar face behind the counter, without the traffic, the signage, the noise, or the visual clutter of a commercial district. Everything you need within a 10-minute walk, nothing that requires raising your voice to compete with it. The result is a street that feels complete, not stripped of life, but composed. When you walk through one of these neighborhoods, something environmental psychology calls softly fascinating unfolds around you. Researchers at the University of Michigan spent decades studying why certain environments restore cognitive function while others deplete it. Their attention restoration theory, published in 1989, found that the mind recovers not through emptiness, but through what they called gentle fascination. Environments that hold your attention without demanding it. Moving leaves, shadows across stone, the small motion of someone tending a garden. These are not empty sensory experiences. They are restorative ones. The nervous system registers them as safe, and slowly, cortisol levels begin to fall. Japanese residential streets provide this almost continuously. The narrow lanes, the small setbacks before each home, the plants that soften hard edges, the seasonal changes visible on every surface. None of it shouts. All of it rewards noticing. But there's a second design layer operating beneath this, and most visitors never quite identify it. It's called shared space. A Dutch traffic engineer named Hans Monderman asked a strange question. What if safer streets needed fewer rules? In the 1970s, he began removing something from streets rather than adding to them. He removed signs, curbs, lane markings, traffic lights. His argument was counterintuitive. When a street gives drivers no instructions, he found, they slow down instinctively, not because they are told to, because the absence of certainty makes them pay attention. Monderman's implementations in the Netherlands reduced vehicle speeds by as much as 40% and lowered accident rates dramatically. His approach has since spread to cities in Europe, Japan, Australia, and beyond. Japan's Senshu zones arrived at a version of this independently, when a neighborhood road is kept deliberately narrow, often just wide enough for one car to pass comfortably. Drivers do not need a sign to tell them to slow down. The geometry of the street becomes the instruction. And something else shifts when that happens. The pedestrian stops bracing. The cyclist stops calculating escape routes. The older adult with the grocery bag stops anticipating the moment a car will rush past too close. Eye contact replaces traffic signals. Awareness replaces assumption. Courtesy, perhaps for the first time in an urban context, becomes structurally convenient rather than inconvenient. The street stops being a competition and becomes a negotiation. This is where Ma enters. Ma is one of the more difficult Japanese concepts to translate precisely because English doesn't have a word for what it describes. It is often rendered as the space between things, but that only tells part of the story. Ma is not empty space. It is meaningful space. The pause between two musical notes that makes them a phrase instead of noise. The silence between two sentences that lets the weight of words settle. The threshold of a doorway, which marks not just where outside ends and inside begins, but the moment of transition between them. In the context of a neighborhood, Ma is the gap between the road and the front door. The small garden visible over a low wall. The potted plants that soften a concrete edge. The interval of quiet between one micro-commercial shopfront and the next. These gaps are not accidents. They are the spatial grammar of Shizuka. And here is the part that matters for a life, not just a neighborhood. Chronic stress is not usually dramatic. It rarely arrives as a single large event. It accumulates, the way sediment accumulates, layer by thin layer, until the bed of a river has changed without anyone noticing exactly when. For many people, the background noise of modern life has become so constant it no longer reads as stress. It reads as normal. The tension in the shoulders, the mild irritability, the difficulty settling, the sense that even a quiet evening at home doesn't quite feel quiet. What acoustic ecology and environmental psychology are beginning to make measurable is something that slow-paced living cultures have understood intuitively for a long time. The environment you move through every day is not neutral. It is either drawing down on your nervous system's reserves or replenishing them. And the difference, at the level of neighborhood design, comes down to a set of choices that are entirely obvious once you know what you're looking at. The width of the road, the scale of the shops, the presence of plants, the interval between demands on your attention. Design influences expectation. Expectation influences behavior. Behavior, repeated over years, becomes something that feels like character. What Japan understood, long before the research caught up, is that the calm of its residential streets is not a cultural byproduct. It is an output of specific decisions about how space should be organized between people. Senshu zoning, micro-commercial integration, shared space street geometry, and Ma as a governing principle of design. 4 choices, each modest on its own, compounded over decades into something calming and beautiful. You don't have to redesign a city to apply any of this, but you can begin to see your own daily environment differently, to notice what is demanding your attention versus what is offering it, to recognize the difference between a walk that depletes you and a walk that restores you, and ask what the difference actually is. The street you live on is doing something to your nervous system right now. The question is whether you've ever stopped to notice what. Peace rarely arrives the way we expect it to. It doesn't announce itself. It accumulates. One quiet doorway, one potted plant on a step, one street narrow enough that no one is in a hurry, one small pause at a time. And over years, those small pauses begin shaping something much larger. Not just calmer streets, calmer minds. Architecture doesn't simply shape cities. Given enough time, it starts quietly shaping us.